If you're trying to choose between the MacBook Neo and the base 14-inch MacBook Pro with M5 chip, this is not just a normal budget versus premium comparison. The MacBook Neo runs Apple's A19 Pro chip, which is a mobile class chip, while the MacBook Pro uses Apple's full M5 laptop chip. So the real question is not which one is better, because the Pro is obviously better. The real question is whether the Pro is better enough to justify the extra money. The MacBook Neo is Apple's entry-level laptop. The 14-inch MacBook Pro with M5 sits in a much higher tier. So this comparison is really about value. Are you paying too much for the Pro, or are you actually getting a better machine for the money? Because that's what matters. Here are the core specs. The MacBook Neo has a 13-inch liquid retina display with a native resolution of 2408 by 1504 at 219 pixels per inch, with 500 nits of brightness, support for 1 billion colors, and a standard 60Hz refresh rate. It runs the Apple A18 Pro chip with a 6-core CPU made up of 2 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. It also has a 5-core GPU, a 16-core neural engine, and 60 GB per second of memory bandwidth. It comes with 8 GB of unified memory and either 256 or 512 GB of SSD storage. Whereas the base 14-inch MacBook Pro with M5 has a 14.2-inch liquid retina XDR display with a native resolution of 1302 by 1964 at 254 pixels per inch, a 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio, up to 1000 nits sustained full screen XDR brightness, 1600 nits peak HDR brightness, up to 1000 nits SDR outdoor brightness, and ProMotion adaptive refresh rate up to 120 Hz. The base M5 model uses a 10-core CPU, a 10-core GPU, has over double the memory depending on the model that you get, and comes with much higher storage options. This specific model has 512 GB of storage with 16 GB of RAM. So even before real-world use, these are clearly not the same class of machine. In terms of performance, this is the biggest difference in this entire comparison. The MacBook Neo uses Apple's A18 Pro, which is a very capable chip, but it's still a mobile class chip. Apple lists a 6-core CPU, 5-core GPU, and 60 GB per second memory bandwidth, whereas the MacBook Pro uses the M5 chip with a 10-core CPU and a 10-core GPU, plus it has active cooling, which is critical. The MacBook Neo is completely fanless, which means it runs silent, but under sustained workloads, it has less thermal headroom. The Pro has a fan and is built to hold performance much longer. And this matters because burst speed and sustained speed are not the same thing. Opening apps and light browsing may feel fine on both, but once you start trying to export video, working with larger photo libraries, running heavier multitasking, or doing longer creative sessions, the Pro is the one that is built to stay fast. The Neo is fast enough for light work, but the Pro is the one I would trust for real work. The 14-inch MacBook Pro with M5 chip is on another level in terms of display. It has a 14.2-inch liquid retina XDR display at 3024 by 1964 with 254 ppi. It has a 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio, 1000 nits sustained XDR brightness, 1600 nits peak HDR brightness, and ProMotion up to 120 Hz. In real life, that means the Pro looks smoother, brighter, more contrasty, and way more premium every single time you use it. Whereas the display difference on the MacBook Neo is massive. The MacBook Neo gives you a 13-inch liquid retina panel at 2408 by 1506 with 219 ppi and only 500 nits peak brightness. And that's perfectly fine for casual use. The text is sharp, colors look good, and for the price, it is respectable. This is the part of the laptop you look at all day, and the Pro's display is one of the clearest reasons to spend more. Memory and storage are another huge separation point. The MacBook Neo only comes with 8 GB of RAM and either 256 or 512 GB of SSD storage. whereas the base 14-inch MacBook Pro with M5 starts with 16 gigabytes of storage, and Apple's M5 specs page lists 512 or 1 terabyte SSD for the M5 model, configurable higher. This matters because 8 gigabytes of RAM is okay for light basic use, but 16 gigabytes of RAM gives you much more breathing room for multitasking, creative apps, and keeping this laptop longer. So even if the Neo feels okay right now, the Pro is much better positioned for long-term use. The MacBook Neo is limited in a way that matters. It gives you one USB 3 USB-C port with DisplayPort and up to 10 gigabits per second, one USB 2 USB-C port with up to 480 megabits per second, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. It supports one external display up to 4K at 60 Hz. The MacBook Pro, on the other hand, gives you a MagSafe 3 charging port, 3 Thunderbolt 4 USB ports up to 40 gigabits per second, HDMI, an XDXC card slot, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. It also supports much better external display setups, including up to 2 external 6K displays at 60 Hz, or one 6K plus one 4K at 144 Hz, or even 8K at 60 Hz over HDMI. If you plug in accessories, work with SD cards, use external monitors, or move large files, the Pro absolutely embarrasses the Neo here. Battery is also clearly better on the Pro. Apple rates the MacBook Neo up to 16 hours of video streaming and up to 11 hours of wireless web with a 36.5 watt-hour battery and a 20-watt USB power adapter. The 14-inch MacBook Pro with M5 is rated for up to 24 hours of video streaming and up to 16 hours of wireless web. It has a much larger 72.4 watt-hour battery, comes with a 70-watt USB power adapter, and supports fast charging with a 96-watt adapter or higher. Pro is not just more powerful, it lasts longer and charges in a more serious way. The MacBook Neo has a 1080p FaceTime HD camera and dual speaker system, as well as dual mic array with directional beamforming. It also supports spatial audio on the built-in speakers. The 14-inch MacBook Pro upgrades that to a 12-megapixel center stage camera with desk view support, a 6-speaker sound system with force-canceling woofers, and a studio-quality 3-mic array with a higher signal-to-noise ratio. It also has better headphone support through the 3.5mm headphone jack. If you care about video calls, media consumption, music, or voice recording, the Pro is not just slightly better, it's dramatically better. The MacBook Neo is the easier machine to carry. It weighs 1.23 kilograms, is 1.27 centimeters thin, and has a smaller 13-inch footprint. The 14-inch MacBook Pro weighs 1.55 kilograms and is 1.55 centimeters thick. So if your priority is portability, the Neo definitely wins. The Neo just feels lighter and simpler. The Pro feels dense, more serious, and way more premium. This is one of the most underrated differences. The MacBook Neo keyboard is fine, but it feels more basic. The MacBook Pro has Apple's Magic Keyboard with better stability, way better key feel, and more consistency. The trackpad is also a big upgrade. The MacBook Pro uses a Force Touch trackpad with haptic feedback, which means it feels more precise, more consistent, and a lot more premium. Neo, however, just uses a traditional click mechanism, which just doesn't feel as refined. That is what you use all day, and the Pro feels significantly better. Both laptops are modern, but there are still a lot of differences. The MacBook Neo supports Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 6, whereas the 14-inch MacBook Pro with M5 lists Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3 in the support specs page. Either way, wireless is not the reason to choose between these. Performance, display, ports, battery, and audio matter way more. So which one should you buy? So my recommendation is, if all you're doing is watching YouTube, browsing the internet, doing online shopping, watching movies online, writing emails, working in Word documents, FaceTiming, messaging, social media, simple things like online banking, then the MacBook Neo is exactly what you need. All these kinds of tasks, the A18 Pro chip is more than fast enough, and the 8GB of memory is not going to hold you back. Because with these tasks, you're not pushing the laptop, you're just using it. In this situation, buying the MacBook Pro is honestly overkill. However, if your usage looks like this, so I'll list some examples. So say you're doing video editing in Final Cut, Premiere, photo editing with Lightroom, Photoshop, running multiple apps at once, using external monitors, transferring large files, content creation, coding, development, long-term heavy use, then this is where the MacBook Pro makes a huge difference. The M5 chip is built for sustained performance, not just light tasks. And the 16GB of memory gives you way more room to multitask without slowing down. If you try to do this kind of work on the MacBook Neo, it will work, but you're gonna feel the limitations much faster. The Neo is using an A18 Pro mobile class chip with 16GB of RAM. This is the same chip that's found in the iPhone 16 Pro and iPhone 16 Pro Max, which is fine for everyday tasks, but it's not designed for heavier workloads. So these are not two laptops competing with each other, they are built for two completely different types of users. Here's my Remy Tech Lab honest verdict. The MacBook Neo is not a bad laptop, but it's a clearly compromised laptop. You're getting a much smaller 13-inch 16Hz display, far weaker port selection, a much simpler audio and webcam setup, a smaller battery, and an A18 Pro mobile class chip. Whereas the 14-inch MacBook Pro with M5 gives you the 3024x1964 120Hz liquid Retina XDR display, 16GB of memory to start, stronger sustained performance, much better ports, a better camera, much better speakers and mics, and battery life that goes up to 24 hours of video streaming. So yes, it costs way more, but it also gives you way more. My advice is simple. Buy the Neo only if your workload is light and the price is the only thing that really matters. But if you actually use your laptop as a serious machine, the MacBook Pro is absolutely worth paying more for. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments, did you buy a MacBook Neo and how do you like it? Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. See you guys in the next one.